So what if your greatest disappointment led to your greatest success? In fact, what if your greatest disappointment shaped your future? Well, today we have a conversation with Lindsey Hanlon, who used her challenges and achievements as an NCAA athlete as a driving force in her life. I encourage you to listen to this podcast with your teenager or your college-age children or your grandchildren. Discuss with them how God never wastes our time and uses always today's circumstances to form us into the man and woman that He wants us to be. Here's my conversation with Lindsey Hanlon. Well, Lindsey, thanks so much for joining us here on The Journey. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and very honored.
Well, you're a wife, a mother, an influencer, a podcaster. You just did a book. So, what do you do in your free time?
In my free time, exercise. I make that a point in my day to get done. But I like to unwind and hang out with Mike, and we talk a lot about what we want to, do in our future and continue to grow. So
you guys like to dream together.
We do. Yeah. It's probably one of my favorite
How long
things
have you and Mike been married?
13 years.
13 years. Mm-hmm. And you have 4 children.
4 children.
Tell me about your kids.
Okay, we've got Parker. He's our son. He's 12. Twin girls, Piper and Presley, who are 9, and a baby girl, Penelope, who's 5.
One of the things that you have on your book cover, one of the first things after your name is a believer in Jesus or follower of Jesus. Mm-hmm. When did that come about for you? When did you trust in Christ?
To have that personal relationship with Him, it was very much the focus I took in my faith and personal development journey after I lost my grandparents. Like, I was really in a grieving state, although I felt very blessed to have them. They were 91 when they passed, so it wasn't something that was very tragic. It was something we knew was coming, and I had that opportunity to sit with them and be with them, and just remembering all the things about my grandparents and my grandmother always showing me Jesus's picture, like, do you know who this is? And I think because she knew I was an emotional teen, and she always just wanted me to have that grounding faith. And I grew up Catholic, so I feel like after I lost them, I needed that peace. I needed to understand things a little bit better. We
have a resource called Living Grounded, and it starts, the first chapter is about the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. Joseph is sold by his brothers, and then he's sold into slavery, and then he's in Potiphar's house. He gets falsely accused. He's in prison, and then he's the second in command of the land, and God uses him to save the nation of Israel. So it's a fascinating story. And we use that story to help people see that God never wastes our time.
Right.
And we have a little thing we do, high times and low times, and then influencers in our life in the hand of God. One of the stories that you have started out as kind of a pivotal time in your life, started out as kind of a low time, but really was so critical in the journey that God had you on. So talk about the day when you got cut from the basketball team.
I can remember it so clearly. I rarely forget much. So I can remember this so clearly because it really was a hard time for me. And looking back, I think, wow, you weren't really that good of a basketball player. Like, that wasn't your calling. So getting cut, I just remember running out of there and one of the teammates running after me and just trying to console me. And it's okay, you can try out again next year. And my dad waiting for me and just feeling like he is going to be so disappointed in me. And he said the same thing, like, we can just keep working at it. We can, I can train you. We can get ready for next year. And I was a teenager, so I just cried and just wanted to run to my room and cry some more. And I just remember thinking, like, swimming is such it was, basketball is a winter sport. So what can I do over the winter time to not play a sport? I always wanted to achieve. I was an achiever, still am, but I said, I think I'm going to try out for the swim team. And now I had no previous experience besides summer swimming at the country club with friends. I can stay afloat, so to speak. But my mom was like, okay, do you want me to go with you? And I just said, no, I'll go. And it ended up being the greatest opportunity. It was something that was clearly calling me. And I didn't know where it would lead. I just knew that I enjoyed it and I was going to keep trying. And it was a great first season. So
you swim in high school and then you start going to some camps in the summer, different things. And all of a sudden, someone from University of Pittsburgh says, hey, ever thought about swimming in college? And next thing you know, you're a college athlete. Talk about that.
It was such a blessing. So I swam YMCA. So as soon as I finished my first season, I started to swim for the YMCA in our area. And I did that for several seasons. So like basically 9th through 11th grade. And then I finally decided, to move on from there. I follow where I'm being called, enough's enough of this team. There, there's always some sort of thing that triggers you or makes you think maybe I need to go to a different team. And so I told my parents, I want to try Team Pitt. It was a club team that practices at the University of Pittsburgh. And 2 of the coaches were also university coaches. So it was kind of a cool aspect. And so I was just swimming. I remember putting my fins on for a set we were doing. And, Coach Jeff was like, would you like to, or have you ever thought about swimming in college? And I was like, no. And it's kind of interesting because I was, a senior at that time. So it's kind of interesting that it never crossed my mind. And he said, would you like to come on a recruiting trip? And I was like, to University of Pittsburgh? Okay. So I said yes. And so I had looked at Pittsburgh. I went to Washington and Jefferson as well. And ultimately, I was super excited about the chance to swim at a Division I school. So
it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
You were there for a year or two.
2.
And you decided you need to make a change.
Yeah, this was where my parents really stepped in, where sometimes you think your parents are just being extremely difficult. Why can't they just leave me be? But I was very emotional. I was surrounded by a lot of people that were easily not Christians. It was a very dark swim team. I never wanted to get too into it because everyone's at a different stage in their life right now and everyone's doing better and well. And we're, so I wasn't going to write, a tell-all, but it was just something that I knew wasn't meant for me. My parents would call and be like, why aren't you feeling great? And why aren't you, they were just didn't want me to be so emotional and so upset all the time. So they were like, you're either coming out of school or we're going to take you to a psychologist every week. And so I would go there and they would pick me up and they would take me to Murraysville so just probably 20 minutes outside of the University of Pittsburgh. And I would talk to her and she said, have you ever thought about leaving the school? And it was one of those things where one of those moments, those key points in your life where you're like, wow, that scares me and terrifies me because I'm so blessed to be at the University of Pittsburgh. It's a great school. It's Division I school. But it also excited me. There was something that was this is a great opportunity. Why don't you think about it? And that was really hard for me. And I talk a little bit about it in the book because I respected my coaches, the highest respect for them. They brought me on. They were such, mentors and so caring.
And they have to release you if
they do, which I didn't initially know. And that was an interesting situation. I was emailing some of the other schools I was looking at, so Penn State, Virginia Tech, and South Carolina. And it was the Penn State coach that said, have you even signed a release form yet? And I was like, no. They were like, you need to go do that. So that was one of the hardest walks for me up to the coach's office to ask to be released. And they signed it right away. So I think they knew.
You end up going to the University of South Carolina. Went to a little warmer weather.
I did.
Sure.
Saw the palm trees, and I was pretty sold.
And it was a good change for you.
It was a good change, refreshing change, and also one of those things where I love a good challenge. And so, not that it wasn't challenging to swim in the Big East, but I was probably at the top of the game there at that point. And going into the SEC, you're swimming a whole different tribe of people. And so I got to swim next to an Olympian at one meet, and I remember being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm swimming next to her. And they were like, well, you earned it and you're here, so just get in there and swim. And she was so nice, and I dropped time. So it's one of those things where when you continue to challenge yourself and put yourself in situations where you can grow, that's how you expand, not just staying where you're just at the top and you're happy there. It was just an opportunity too. I got to meet other coaches who have remained great mentors and other friends. And so I've been very blessed with both opportunities. So
you're at the University of South Carolina, and there's a day when the coach brings you up front and asks the team, do you think Lindsay's a leader? Now, you were not You didn't have any weren't a captain or co-captain or whatever. Give us the backstory of that story. Like, why did he do that? And what did that mean to you? And just how it was very encouraging for you when he did it.
It was. I think because I always desired to make a difference, to make an impact. And I think they knew I was one of the emotional teammates. There are times where I look back and I think it's been such a gift to be who I am. But for the longest time, I wanted to just be like calm, cool, and collected like everyone else, So I think they almost knew I needed to hear some of those things to encourage me to continue to rise up, to have that encouragement and just know that I was there for a reason. I think he really just wanted me to feel secure, wanted, needed on the team, and I knew that. And I think one of the reasons, like, I always would get upset if I weren't a captain or a co-captain. I was like, I feel like I am always pouring into people and there for everyone, but I was still leading in so many other ways. And I remember one of my friends, I swam my 5th year senior year because it was an Olympic trial year. And so I was working towards that as well. And she just did her senior speech and just thanked me because I was a roommate of hers. We all lived in this, there were 5 of us in this one house. And she said, Lindsay shows up every day and she doesn't have to. Like, she's not, on the actual college team anymore. She just shows up. She puts her heart and soul into it. She works harder than probably any of us. And it was one of those things where it hit me that you don't have to have the captain on your coat or anything like that to be a leader. Just keep showing people, leading by example. So
University of South Carolina was a great spot.
It was.
You enjoyed being in Columbia. It's a great area.
It is.
And you had a great finish to your college career there. Now, talk a little bit about the 5th year and the Olympic trials. Did you?
I fell just a tad short, but I was having some serious back pain at the time. And it was hard. It was hard to, I'm at this final meet. It was in Charlotte, and my dad came down to watch, and I already knew my back was in such bad shape at this point. And who knows? I probably could have done so many things different, but I was okay with it. Even if I had made it to Olympic trials, I'm a realist. I wasn't going to make it to the Olympics. The top 2 in one event make it, so it was unlikely. But I was just grateful for the experience. I got to swim another year. I got to meet some of these other coaches because a new head coach had come in. I remember him pulling me out one time and saying, "You have more talent than anyone here in this pool." So basically, like, get it together and, continue to work hard. And I'm just grateful for all those mentorships. Like, I still get to talk to some of these coaches that are on Instagram and, cheer each other on in our different journeys of life. So it's been really, really just a blessing, But yeah, I fell a little bit short. I mean, it was like 0.02 short of an Olympic trial cut. So it was close. But I only swam, that was 3 or 4 years in high school, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and then like 4 years and then 5th year senior in college. So it was a very short swimming journey, and I had accomplished a lot. So I was very grateful for it.
Lindsay, talk to coaches and teachers listening. When I hear your story, coaches always were great encouragers to you and influencers to you. Not only encouraging, like, way to go, you're great, but pick it up, you can do better, right? You have a lot of talent, just keep at it.
Yeah.
And talk to coaches and just encourage them as they encourage kids. Because so this coach at South Carolina, right? He saw something in you, and that he knew he needed to encourage you with the other girls and in front of the other girls, and pretty masterful. He was a student of you to be able to do that. So encourage coaches and teachers.
Yeah, I would say, just listen and watch, and you'll know the people that will need an extra pick-me-up, even if they are some of your fastest swimmers, and the ones that you might need on the team the most, they might need just as much encouragement as someone else. So I would just say, talk to them, get to know them, and, don't be afraid to have conversations with them or pull them up and put them on the spotlight. It was really hard for me. I was like, why is he doing this? And I was crying, but at the same time, it made me feel very secure and very wanted and very comforted. And I think sometimes you just need to not be afraid to encourage and pull someone aside and do what you need to do to just keep that team camaraderie and community up, be uplifting and encouraging, because I have been on some teams that it was not always the case, and so just be a good leader and show them the way.
One of the verses that you have in your book is Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. That's a powerful verse. Talk a little bit about what that verse means to you personally and how God, he knows the plans he has for us, and then he leads us along those plans.
So yeah, for me, like I said a little bit earlier about the emotion and why I couldn't be someone that was calm, cool, and collected. And I think too, I think sometimes people look at so-and-so if they're too emotional or they're too this or they're too that. For the longest time, I tried to suppress that and neglect that because I just wanted to be like everyone else. And I wanted to please my parents and, and achieve so much. And then the more I realized I'm like perfectly made as who I am, and it has been leading and guiding me and not messing up anything because these are the plans that he has for me. So I think just knowing that some of the things that I had to go through that were very hard and were not the easiest things to walk away from, because I did have some great teammates at Pitt, but it was not the greatest place for me. And I think when you have those hard moments, sometimes you just start to wonder, like, why can't things just go smoothly for me? Why do I have to be the one that looks constantly disrupted and a loose cannon or too much for everybody? It's just the plans he has for me. And I see it now, how it all works and how it works out for the good. Things are working out for us, not to us, and that he has a plan, even in those darker, harder times. Knowing you a little bit and getting to talk with you and meet you again, for kids, extremely busy. You do a podcast, you're on social media, influencer, exercising, the whole bit. Then in your book, you have this verse. So I probably expected this verse not to be in your book, right? Isaiah 40:31. They that wait on the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up on wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary. They'll walk and not faint. So, Lindsay, some listening to this just think, oh my goodness, energy and always upbeat and going on. And yet life is real, right? And sometimes you just got to slow down, wait on the Lord, and just listen to him. And so right after that verse, you said, slow down, and I need to do some other things. But one of the things you said, I need to deepen my faith. Talk about how important it is to slow down at times in our life and deepen our faith. Yeah, so I mean, I am an action taker and I am constantly moving, but that doesn't mean in those moments of movement that I'm not still enough to hear what he's telling me, right? So that I tell my podcast listeners a lot that sometimes I will just run to my Christian playlist. And it can be in a very emotional time because, like I said, I like to cry. And I know that that's not always a bad thing anymore. So I'm listening and I'm just making sure that the things that I'm doing are in alignment for what I want in my life, which means walking in my purpose. So that gives me a lot of energy and excitement in my life by doing that. But just pausing enough. Like I have pretty much a routine in the morning where I get up. I'm a little bit more strict on my routine in the fall, in the winter, whenever I have to get the kids up for school. But I do like to get up, exercise, read my devotionals. Even if I'm on Instagram, usually I'm always looking for a Bible verse or something that's calling to me, on my explore page when things show up. But just knowing that, he is in control. I think that has helped me so much in motherhood and in difficult times when, you want to control everything and you just can't. And I think I always tell people that the twins broke me of that control, because I feel like when I had Parker, I was like, I can do, I can control things. And then the twins came along and I went from 1 to 3 kids and I could barely get their diapers on. One's crawling away. And I was like, I've lost all control of the situation. And it's been a blessing. So how he teaches us in those moments where I wasn't expecting to have twins and then I have 3 kids all of a sudden. And that helps someone like me who is always trying to control too much. And I think just knowing that we are here on a journey to bless others, to make an impact, to have a purpose. And so just calming themselves down enough to have self-awareness and know exactly what you want, how you need to set boundaries, which I talk a little bit about in the book, how I had to protect my peace and walk away from things that trigger me, aren't good for me, and that it's okay, you know? And so I think just being patient and waiting on him. And we went through a couple years ago, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years ago, with our one daughter, where she was, possibly going to be diagnosed with a really, really rare bone cancer and aggressive bone cancer. And I was really shook, I will say, especially because there has been clusters of it in our area. It's Ewing sarcoma. And that was really hard for me. And so just being patient enough and just trusting through that process that how am I going to get through this? Because that's not something I thought as a young parent I would have to navigate so soon. And we were fortunate enough that it did not end up being that. There are days I still worry sometimes, but you have to be patient and you have to wait and you have to know that it's all part of his plan.
Forgiveness and grace. You talk about that in your book. Just elaborate on it a little bit. As you think about forgiveness, God's forgiveness to you, and then the forgiveness and grace we should show to others. How do you think about that? How do you teach that to those on podcasts and influencers? But more than that, what does that mean to you, forgiveness and grace?
So forgiveness for me, it's, forgiveness of others and also forgiveness of self, like things that you may have looked back on your journey and you say, wow, I wish I could have said that differently, or I wish I would have handled that differently. Those are hard things to sit with for forever. And I think knowing that Jesus is always there for us, we can kind of let ourselves off the hook a little bit and say, okay, well, that was that. And, you have opportunities to give yourself grace, to apologize, to forgive yourself. And that's how we can move forward and give ourselves permission to live the prosperous life that he has for us. We don't have to sit and, continue to bash ourselves for everything that we've done on our journey. And I think that's something too I've learned, through the Bible Chapel as well, is just how much peace we have with the relationship with Jesus. And so forgiveness of others is just knowing that everyone's fighting a battle. And we all, like I said, are products of our family and generational trauma and all of these things that everyone has going on. Not everyone's going to do the personal development and the faith walk and all of the deep faith work that I do with, honestly, sometimes just going out for a run and listening to my Christian music and talking to God. Not everyone's going to do that. And so I think just giving that forgiveness, that some people don't want to do the work. They don't want to look in the mirror. They don't want to take that time to go deep. And so I realize, my heart is my heart and I can't expect it from everyone else. So just giving that forgiveness and grace and just understanding that everyone has their own journey and their own walk and showing them the way, right? So I feel like sometimes I end up coaching my parents. I end up coaching some of my parents' friends. I got a great review from one of my mom's friends who, I used to always think, wow, everyone is just such a perfect Catholic and Christian and just, like that, that's what you think of and what you learn. And then they write you these amazing messages, and it just brings it all together. So you sit in all of that, wishing you could be like everyone else. And they're all just, doing this and that. And then you realize that everybody is actually fighting a battle, has a lot of work they need to do on their own journey, and just show them the way.
As you desire to influence people in your spiritual journey, exercise has always been a big part of that, right? You talk about it in your book and just having the conversations with you. Again, not for everybody, but it'll resonate with many people. Talk about the importance that exercise is for you, just in your overall health as an individual.
So for me, I started to, as I developed my deep self-awareness, that I need to move my body for just mental clarity, peace, sanity, saving for a mother of four. I remember one time Mike came home from work when the twins were young, and he was like, please just go for a run. And I was like, oh, I can't believe he said that. So I would give him the kids, hand them the twins. They were young. I was still nursing them. And I went for a 30-minute jog, and I came back, and it was just a peace that I really can't explain. So sometimes I think we talk ourselves out of exercise because it's going to be painful, and we don't realize the gift that it is. If we have the ability to move, we're meant to keep moving. And I think too, I want to show my children how to take care of themselves in this world where there's video games and cell phones, and you see a lot of kids just sitting down. Just get up and move. And I tell my listeners on my podcast too, some of the greatest ideas that I have for my life or what I'm being called to do next comes when I'm moving my body, not when I'm just sitting on the couch.
Right.
Mike and I sit and we talk about, our visions, and we're, usually sitting. But I love that time that I gift myself where I can, and of course this comes from swimming too. 4 hours a day, my heart rate was elevated. So it's hard for me to not have it elevated for a certain amount of time, but I really feel like it is something, it's a gift to be able to move our bodies. I am grateful for that gift that I have to just get up and move. And even if it's just a walk or a jog or some weightlifting, it's a blessing.
That's great. That's great. So your podcast is called
Wing It, Rise Up.
Wing It, Rise Up. People can get it on all the platforms out there, I'm sure. Your book is called Flying by the Seat of Your Soul. And pretty cool. I want to thank you for coming on.
No, it was a blessing.
I appreciate so much your love for Christ, your desire to use the platform that he's given you to share him with others. And it's pretty cool to see what God's doing in your life.
Yeah, it's been truly an amazing journey. I'm so grateful. And I just know that he's moving through me. I feel called the more I get opportunities like this and the work that I get to do to just show people like what a great God we have, and that we can live a prosperous and good life even with our difficult journeys that they're meant for us. So,
well, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, Lindsay. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Ron. Thank you.
My conversation with Lindsay is a reminder that life doesn't always go the way we plan. But God is sovereign, and he takes our challenges, even our personal failures, and he uses them to form us into the person he wants us to be. So don't let the circumstances of your life hold you back. Allow God to take them and propel you forward for his honor and for his glory. Remember these words from Jeremiah chapter 29, 11 through 13. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. And then you will call upon me, and you come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Thanks for joining us on the Journey Podcast.